The Chronicle of Flame had never been brought into the council chamber before. In 200 years of survival, wardens reported verbally. The sacred book stayed locked in the archives where blood-bought knowledge couldn't be contaminated by politics. But when Vaemar Qhaedorys walked into that chamber carrying the Chronicle, dragonscale binding gleaming in lamplight, every council member knew someone was about to call everything they believed a lie. And in the next 60 minutes, steel would be drawn, a table would shatter, and the youngest council member would accuse the greatest living warden of cowardice to his face, while his hand rested on Valyrian steel. Because what Vaemar witnessed at the wall didn't just prove the boundaries were real, it proved that 2 centuries of hiding might have been the biggest mistake House Qhaedorys ever made. This is Episode 3, The Council of Scars. Vaemar slammed the Chronicle onto the table so hard the whale oil lamps flickered.
Read it.
His voice was ice.
Page 473. The entry I wrote 3 hours ago.
Warden Lord Darys didn't reach for the book.
We don't need theatrics, Vaemar. Just tell us what you saw.
I saw a Targaryen queen try to fly beyond the wall. I saw her dragon refuse 3 times. I saw the exact same boundary refusal pattern we've documented in the eastern deep zones for 40 years.
Vaemar's hands were shaking.
And I stayed hidden in the clouds like a coward, while her dragon screamed a warning she doesn't understand.
Silence. Then the hatch steward, Kirillos, barely 30, ambitious as fire, laughed. Actually laughed.
You're angry at yourself for following doctrine? That's what this is?
He stood.
The great Farsight the Unbroken, legendary dragon slayer, bleeding heart hero, is mad because he successfully completed a reconnaissance mission without compromising operational security.
Sit down.
Malus warned.
No, I'm tired of watching this council worship a man who's become too old and too scared to make hard choices.
Kirillos pointed at Vaemar.
You had a chance to forge an alliance with the most powerful kingdom in the world, to stop hiding like rats, to actually use our dragons for something besides killing oversized animals in the frozen waste.
Vaemar's hand moved to Frostbrand's hilt. Not drawing, just touching.
Say the word coward one more time. I want to hear it clearly before I respond.
The temperature in the chamber dropped 10 degrees. Darys stood.
That's enough. Both of you.
Is it?
Kirillos was past caution now.
Because I think we need to hear this. The legendary Vaemar, who fought 4 bone maws and barely survived, who writes doctrine and bleeds for Ibben. This same warden watched a queen in danger and chose secrecy over warning her.
The queen wasn't in danger,
Vaemar said quietly.
The dragon protected her perfectly.
You don't know what's beyond that wall.
Exactly.
Vaemar's voice cracked like thunder.
I don't know. You don't know. The council doesn't know. And revealing ourselves to warn about a threat we can't define, can't prove, can't even name, would accomplish exactly one thing: exposing us to conquest or destruction.
Or alliance.
There is no alliance with conquerors.
Vaemar stepped forward.
The Targaryens absorbed or destroyed every dragon rider family they encountered. Why would we be different?
Because we have knowledge they need.
We have observations, correlations, dragon refusal patterns.
Vaemar grabbed the Chronicle.
That's not proof. That's not leverage. That's barely even intelligence.
Kirillos pulled his own blade. Not Valyrian steel, just regular steel. But the intent was clear.
Then maybe it's time for new leadership. Someone who understands power is useless if you're too afraid to wield it.
The Lamp Master's voice cut through the tension like a blade through fog.
Everyone, outside, now.
What?
Now!
5 minutes later, the entire council stood in the frozen courtyard as dawn broke across the mountains. The Lamp Master pointed east, where Vaedar was visible in the distant Ares.
Vaemar, call your dragon.
Why?
Call him now!
Vaemar whispered the command in Valyrian, a bonding call, barely audible. Vaedar's head rose immediately. The grey dragon launched without hesitation, wings catching the dawn wind.
Now.
The Lamp Master turned to Kirillos.
You believe we should reveal ourselves, approach the Targaryens, offer alliance.
He gestured toward the wall's direction, hundreds of miles west.
Vaemar, point Vaedar toward the wall. Command him to fly there.
Vaemar's blood went cold.
No.
Do it.
Vaemar gave the command. Vaedar approached, circled overhead, then stopped. The dragon hovered, waiting, but wouldn't turn west.
Command him again, directly, full authority.
Vaemar tried, in Valyrian. with every ounce of bond weight built over 30 years. Vaedar circled, rumbled, refused.
He won't even point west.
The Lampmaster said quietly.
Not toward the wall. Not toward the boundary 300 miles away that he sensed 3 days ago.
He turned to the Council.
This dragon has flown into bone maw packs, into glasswing swarms, into storms that shredded wings. He's fought horrors that would drive men mad, and he will not fly in the direction of the wall.
Kirillos stared.
That's just training, learned behavior.
He's never been to the wall before.
Vaemar said quietly.
Never been trained to avoid it. Never had a bad experience there.
He looked at his dragon.
He refuses because dragons remember what men forget.
The Lampmaster continued.
The Queen's dragon refused 3 times to cross the boundary. Vaedar won't even approach it from 300 miles away. Vaemar reports identical refusal patterns in the eastern deep zones.
He looked around the Council.
This isn't politics. This isn't cowardice. This is dragons telling us something we're too arrogant to hear.
What?
Kirillos demanded.
What are they telling us?
That there are lines in this world we don't cross, not because we're forbidden, because crossing them is extinction.
Rhaenyra stepped forward.
The question isn't whether the boundary is real. Clearly it is. The question is what we do about it.
We warn them.
Kirillos said.
We approach the Targaryens, share our knowledge.
And then what?
Rhaenyra's voice was steel.
They thank us, grant us autonomy, let us keep our independence.
She laughed bitterly.
They conquered 6 kingdoms. Every dragon rider family they encountered either bent the knee or burned. Why would we be different?
Because we have intelligence they need.
We don't know what they need.
Daenerys's voice silenced everyone.
We know there's a boundary. We know dragons refuse it. We don't know what's beyond it, why it exists, or if it's failing.
He looked at Vaemar.
You witnessed a warning. The Queen's dragon delivered that warning perfectly. What more could you have told her that Silverwing didn't already say?
Vaemar was quiet for a long moment.
Nothing. In that moment, nothing.
Then you made the right choice.
Did I?
Vaemar looked at the Council.
Or did I just postpone the moment when silence becomes complicity?
They returned to the Council chamber. Daenerys spoke first.
The doctrine stands. We maintain secrecy. We do not reveal ourselves to the Targaryens.
He raised a hand to forestall Kirillos' protest.
However, we acknowledge Vaemar's concerns. The convergence between eastern and northern boundaries is too significant to ignore.
What are you proposing?
Maelys asked.
Expanded observation protocols. Western Chronicle flights quarterly instead of annual. Vaemar leads them personally.
That's not enough.
Kirillos said.
It's what we can afford.
Daenerys' voice was final.
We gather evidence. We document patterns. We build an unassailable case. And when the situation deteriorates to the point where intervention becomes necessary, we'll have the knowledge and credibility to offer alliance as equals, not as desperate supplicants.
And if we wait too long?
Vaemar asked quietly. Rhaenyra answered.
Then we'll have documentation, knowledge, the kind of intelligence that survives even if civilizations don't.
She looked at Vaemar.
Your father died protecting people. He saved 800 lives, but his knowledge died with him, and the next generation had to relearn everything he'd discovered. We can't let that happen again.
So we watch, we record, we wait.
We prepare.
Daenerys corrected.
There's a difference.
The vote was called 5-2. Kirillos and one other voted for contact. The rest voted for patience.
Quarterly flights.
Daenerys confirmed.
Maximum observation. 0 contact unless circumstances change catastrophically.
Define catastrophically.
Vaemar said.
The boundary failing. Dragons crossing without refusal. Or whatever's beyond the wall crossing south into populated Westeros.
Daenerys met Vaemar's eyes.
Can you live with this decision?
Vaemar looked at the Chronicle. At 200 years of entries, observations, knowledge purchased in blood.
I can live with it,
he said finally.
The question is whether anyone else will.
That night, Vaemar stood in his quarters, staring at his armor, red steel, black fur, gold trim. The uniform of a warden who watched and recorded. Behind him a knock. Maelys entered without waiting for permission.
You're planning something stupid.
I'm planning something necessary.
That's what people say right before they do something stupid.
She closed the door.
Vaemar, the Council ordered quarterly observations. I know that look. You're planning more than observations.
The Council ordered me to document changes, to gather evidence.
Vaemar turned to face her.
They didn't specify how I gather that evidence.
Don't go closer to the boundary.
I have to know where it is, how it behaves, whether it's stable or degrading.
And if it's not a boundary at all?
Melis's voice dropped.
If it's a cage, and you're about to poke it?
Then I'll document what happens when you poke it. That's my job.
Your job is to survive long enough to teach the next generation.
My job,
Vaemar said quietly.
is to make sure there is a next generation to teach.
He picked up Frostbrand.
The Council thinks patience is wisdom. Maybe they're right. Maybe waiting and watching is the smart choice.
He secured the sword to his belt.
But I watched that silver dragon refuse the boundary 3 times. I felt Vidar's terror from 3 miles away. And I know that whatever created those boundaries is active, intelligent, and patient enough to wait for us to forget why the boundaries exist in the first place.
So what are you going to do?
Vaemar looked out the window toward the west.
I'm going to map the boundary, find its edges, test its limits, document how dragons respond at different distances.
That's insane.
That's field work.
He met her eyes.
And if I find proof, real, undeniable proof that the boundary is failing or that the threat is escalating, then maybe the Council will listen. Maybe the Targaryens will listen. Maybe someone will act instead of just watching.
And if you're wrong, if you get yourself killed testing a boundary we don't understand?
Vaemar smiled without humor.
Then at least my Chronicle entry will be interesting.
After Melis left, Vaemar returned to the archive chamber and added one final note to his entry. Not in the official record, in the margins, personal notation.
Quarterly observation protocol accepted. Council decision recorded, but observation alone is insufficient. We'll conduct proximity testing on next flight. If boundary is degrading, we need to know now, not when it fails completely. If this entry is found after my death, know this. I chose to test the boundary because watching catastrophe unfold is not wardenship. It's cowardice, dressed in protocol.
He signed it with his personal seal, then packed his gear for a flight the Council hadn't authorized, a flight that would take him closer to the wall than any Frostspine warden had ever gone. A flight that would take him closer to the wall than any Frostspine warden had ever gone, or close enough to die discovering it.